So, Amber, what is a public matter for this week?
All right, so this week we're going to discuss the social credit score and what the social credit score is. So the idea is that by your ability to go online, your ability to jaywalk, your ability to do anything, whatever you do, whether you play video games to excess, whether you called in sick to work, all of that plays a role in your social credit score.
And how do they do that?
Well, of course, it's through the algorithms of your phone and, your watch and...
Data?
Of course.
You mean through these things?
Duh. Why would we need chips? We don't need to be tracked with chips.
Are we being tracked?
Of course. You know that. So... the whole thing in China, I guess it's officially started in 2014. So they basically, and with this credit score, you get to it gets determined what you pay for things. So even what you purchase or what food you buy.
Right.
It all gets determined as to whether you can travel.
Right.
Like you're allowed to hop on a train or a plane. Or not just whether you're allowed, but then how much it's going to cost you to get on that train or plane.
Now, who determines your credit score?
Apparently their government.
So.
It's so. So their government gets to regulate your video game usage, whether you jaywalk. So I found this out a while ago, because in China, people wear masks, and they've been wearing masks before COVID, like the little masks. Well, that's twofold. Supposedly they would say it's because they didn't want to catch anything or something was bad.
Right.
The reality is it's because they don't want to be tracked. So the face recognition that they have can only track you if you have the whole face. They can't just track you if it's your eyes. So if you put on a hat and you put on a mask, there's no way for them to tell if you are the one jaywalking or if it's someone else. So they actually wear masks not because it has anything to do with health considerations. It has to do with tracking them.
Right.
So if they want to go into a store and they don't want to be seen going into that store, you would put on a mask.
Right.
So these masks, though it looks like it's like a COVID situation, they've been doing it for a while so that they can't be tracked, so that their score doesn't get fucked with. Because that score can fuck with you for a while. Like, there's no real way to come, well, from what I've researched, there's no real way to come up higher on the score. So once you get knocked down, it's extremely difficult to be brought back up into a higher credit score.
Right.
So
wait. There is no method or no path to freedom through the credit score.
Shocker, no. There is no.
You are where you start at.
No, you are probably lower than where you started at.
So you can drop.
Right.
But you can't go up.
It is very difficult to go up. Like, I think that, like, if you don't miss any days of work and you don't play, you're not on your phone all the time, you don't watch a lot of porn, those can be counted as, like, points, but they don't necessarily, like, there has to be a lot of movement in a positive direction for them to change it higher. Now lower, you just do it and they just take it away.
Now this also includes the places you shop and what you buy.
Yes, so like so you're at the grocery store. If you buy a soda as opposed to a bottle of water, that can knock you down in your credit score. And the funny thing is that the UK thought that it was a brilliant idea in 2014, but the people didn't want it. So they waited. And so what they waited for was, ta-da, pandemic. And they told the people during the pandemic, hey, we've got this cool digital passport. What if we did that? And people were like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Yes. Well, they didn't realize that when they signed up for this digital passport, that it also meant a social credit score. So they've started a social credit score pretty quickly, and they So UK had been talking about it, I think, in 2019.
Right.
And they were told to the people, hey, we're looking at this, China does this system, it's kind of good, whatever. And they were like, hey, what do you guys think? Of course, people were like, no, not really cool, don't really want it. But they then, pushed it with the vaccine passport. And they thought it was going to take them a few years to get even the vaccine passport. It took them less than 2 weeks to bring it up and running and make it so that it was available for you to get your passport digitally and everything else done. Now, the US, of course, likes this idea because if we're able to charge more money for things, these private sectors are all for it.
Right.
Right? Because, though private is capitalism, but still, if someone can get a higher price for a plane ticket because they bought Cheez-Its instead of cabbage or whatever, kale, they're, the big company is all for it.
Right.
So, there is a possibility that it can happen pretty quickly in the US because aside from the fact that we have, digital currency happening and being regulated by the government, which I don't think should ever be mingled personally. Because, if you have, not that I fully understand cryptocurrency because I really don't, but if you have a currency that is based on nothing, essentially, right? There's not
fiat. Well, I don't know anything about cryptocurrency, but something that's based on nothing is what we have now, which is called a fiat currency.
Correct.
Right.
And so it's not backed by anything.
Right.
The thing is with the cryptocurrency, I know that if I have a little understanding. So it's basically a computer system or program that you have so many what's called mining. So they have so many clicks or so many things. And so it's only done for a certain number. So that's how they have the crypto. If it becomes unlimited, then of course we're on fiat and then it doesn't make a difference. It's irrelevant of how many times you mined or how many times you changed it. So the government wants to make it so that it's not mineable, but it's fiat, so it's almost unlimited. Similar to what our dollar is. So that's why Bitcoin went huge and then it dropped and then it went back up. There was this big, huge, I think hack or whatever. Which that's the thing that kind of scares me about the cryptocurrency is that what is your security with it?
I don't know anything about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so it's kind of a confusing thing because it's you don't have, all you have is the internet, really.
Right.
And if the internet is in charge of your money, how is it safe?
I can't answer that. But is this a part of it? All right, so you have a social credit score, and now there's a movement towards digital currency. Now, I would think that digital currency would play hand in hand with this, because if you have a digital currency, everything you do is now known. Because if you have cash, you can make transactions
without it being known.
That are transparent.
Right.
They wouldn't know about it. So with digital currency, I think it would lend itself hand in hand with this social credit score. Is that correct?
That would be correct. So basically, things like, and here's the thing that is kind of insane. So you get the credit score, and it's based on what you buy on Amazon, what you use PayPal for. And then the other thing about the credit score that's not really looked at or thought about, I guess, is the quickness of the government or Big Brother is able to shut it down. For instance, you watched a porn and they didn't like that one particular that you watched. Therefore, tomorrow you don't get to use your credit card, you don't get to use your bank account, you don't get to use the bus, you're done. That's over.
Right.
Now, not that I'm a person that is interested in that sort of thing. I do feel that if you do whatever you want in your own home, you should be able to. That's your business. I don't find it okay that you looking at something or checking something out or something pops up and now you're being reprimanded by authority that you may have not wanted. gets to decide what you get to do with your own money that you worked for.
Right.
I mean, I think the U.S. is headed to a social credit score. I mean, we already have, companies like PayPal shutting down accounts.
That's correct.
Freezing bank accounts because of who you send money to.
I was just going to bring this up.
Which shouldn't be allowed. I mean, at this point, we essentially, if you wanted to drop $5 for that homeless guy or the murderer, that should be your own business.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be.
He didn't like that.
He's so loud. I mean, you shouldn't be allowed, or the government shouldn't be allowed to tell you what you're allowed to spend your own money on. But I guess if we were more in a socialist type of situation,
Right.
then that would be an acceptable exchange. I mean, the government's already giving you your allowance.
Right.
So if you don't spend your allowance correct, then I guess it can be taken away from you. This is what the difference would be from a capitalism to socialist viewpoint.
Right, I agree. Now, with the social credit score, it seems like it has issues not only with your personal liberties of your right to privacy.
Yes.
But it also limits your right to choose.
Right, there is no choice. You have to, you have to pick the woke companies. So you would be drinking Bud Light, and you would be drinking Coke, and you wouldn't be able to have your choice in the matter of what you get to do. And what's labeled extremist, that would be up to them. That wouldn't be up to an extremist or you having...
Extremism.
Like, you wouldn't have the option of... Like, if someone said that painting your house blue was part of being an extremist, then that's what it would be. Right.
So, they would also get to label you based on what your purchases are or your lifestyle or so forth. So they get to categorize you and then reward. Obviously, a reward scale has a rewards to punishment.
Correct. Yeah. So you would be. So instead of shock therapy, where you get shocked if you touch the wrong item, you basically don't get to use your money if you. He's out. If you buy the wrong thing. So, in a sense, it's still a social experiment as to see what they can manipulate to people and make people think that a certain way or do a certain thing. Why would people want to stand out if they're going to lose their ability to feed their family? Let's think about and look at, the Freedom Convoy, which was in Canada, where the truckers lined up, and then people in the United States actually paid money to their different PayPals or Venmos or whatever way that they were to get money to them. And they started freezing their accounts. They started not allowing those monies to be funded. They even started not even letting you make a GoFundMe.
Right. Well, Kyle Rittenhouse had the same problem. I think it was GoFundMe or PayPal and so forth had stopped allowing those fund transfers because they didn't agree with them.
Right. Which,
But on the other hand, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
On the other hand, there was payments that went to whoever they chose they thought was worthy of receiving GoFundMe money.
Right, and see, here's where it gets to be tricky, I guess, because you have the same people, like, for instance, Trump was kicked off Twitter, but I don't know, who's the guy, there's different guys from like Iran and Iraq, and,
Sure.
like a different, anti-white groups that are completely want violence and want people to, stand up and revolt and do whatever, right? The point that like left-wing people make is that it's a private company, and if that's the case, then there should be in their own laws or own rights that they can't discriminate against anyone, right? I mean, wouldn't that be true?
Right.
But at the same time, even if they are a private company, having rights for your country should mean that their policies should mimic our rights.
Right.
At least that's how I view it.
That is exactly right. I think that you said it really well. Your rights should not be infringed on, and the company should, I agree, that's a good word, mimic our freedoms.
Right, they should be able to abide by the Constitution, which is the law of the land. Now, if they, it talks about, we've talked about this before, so on Twitter they said, oh, if you don't like it, go create your own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did. There was Parler,
Mm-hmm.
there was Gab, there was Truth. I think there's another one. I mean, they all three are still functioning, but the downside is Apple, being a private company, decided not to let Gab have an app. So Gab no longer has an app, right?
Not with Apple, that's correct.
And I don't think they have one with Android.
I don't know about that. You can still access their site, but...
you can only log on to it through a computer. It has to be a computer server, which limits their use of how many people they get to go onto their site.
Yeah.
So they have cut off their, I guess would be the phrase, which I'm not going to say it correct, the nose despite their face. Is that a phrase?
Yeah, because they're not getting the wealth from Gab.
Right. So they're not getting the wealth of the users of phones,
Mm-hmm.
from Android, iPhone, whatever, Samsung, who cares? They're not getting those users because some people don't have a computer. Some people aren't able to log on. They only have a phone. Oh wait, because they're given it by our government agencies that we're allowed to have.
Right.
Which I think is complete horseshit, but whatever, that's a different topic. But if you go to make your own company, but the server is Amazon and they choose not to allow you to have your own company,
Right.
how are you supposed to combat the fact that left-wing extremists or left-wing people are saying these things to you? You don't have a chance.
Right.
So even if you do go out and make Truth or make
Mhm.
Parler or make Gab, if you're cut off in some capacity, you're not able to reach the masses.
Yeah, this is in part... Do you remember the hearings they had on Twitter and so forth about government involvement in censoring, preventing people from being on Twitter for...
Yeah.
This is part and parcel of the government being involved in your freedom of speech and so forth. I don't think it's a stretch to say that, based on what I saw in these hearings, that the government is fully in line with a social score with their actions with Twitter and other social media in banning people. I would think that the government would also be in a social score. I believe that, like in China, that the government has the potential, if they already aren't, to start regulating your liberties through this, because they've shown that they have this big tech connection.
Oh yeah, that's definitely obvious. And the real outpoint of this whole thing is that why are there government officials emailing or on the boards of these different companies? Like, how is that allowed? That means that company is no longer private. So your statement of, well, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want, that's now not true. Because the board members that they
Right.
have are government officials.
Right.
Meaning your company is no longer private, it's now a public company.
Right.
In which now it should work for the people. It should abide by the Constitution.
Right.
It should be able to be as free as humanly possible.
Right.
But you get this whole viewpoint of, well, you know, it has to be, you know, it's a private company. It's a private company. You know, I mean, that's their whole speech, is that it's a private company. But then why are there government officials on your books?
Yeah, emailing them and so forth. And what we saw through those hearings is that they're quite involved.
Yeah.
On some level here, and it is scary. I had no idea about China. I knew that on some level, the corporate level, you know, that there was an attempt, and I'm sure it's still there, particularly with advertising, about how, you know, which companies will get advertising privileges.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to say it?
I guess, yeah, now it's being not private.
And again, you know, people wonder about this quote-unquote woke agenda that we're concerned about. Call it what you will. But again, it's an indication that you can't, with your money and so forth, do what you want.
Which you should be allowed to. You worked for it, you earned it, you should be able to pay whatever you want.
Like, I don't know all the influences, and I'm sure there was some, and I don't know the level of it, like with Dylan Mulvaney, with Bud Light. You know, how much of that was, you know, not just plain wokeism from the company itself, but in regards to them advertising and or losing business or gaining business, was a focus on this social credit score that goes on a you know, a corporate level where they do business with you know, advertising agencies saying like, you're not going to be able to advertise unless you bring on somebody like Dylan Mulvaney. I'd like that question asked because I have that question and I don't know, but I suspect it.
So
do you?
I do, and so the thing that's insane about that particular thing is that, like, I think it was Daily Wire, and that's why, like, so the Daily Wire came out with Jeremy's razors, and they've come out with some chocolate. And the reason they came out with Jeremy's razors is because I don't remember exactly how it went down. Either Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh or Knowles went and said something that was completely against the woke agenda, right? And I forget the razor company. I think it's Harry's. Razors.
Yeah.
So they went, and the Harry's Razors said, we're not going to be doing business with you. We're not going to be sponsored, because that was one of their sponsors. Because you said whatever they said. I don't remember what it was.
Right.
This is now a while ago. And because you said that, we no longer want to do business with you. And if you don't change it, we're going to pull all our advertising. Well, they didn't change it, and they didn't change their viewpoint, and they didn't change what they were going to say, and they didn't redact, or they didn't say I'm sorry, or whatever. And so that's how Jeremy's Razors came about.
Right.
Now, I think that same thing happens to a lot of other companies. Whether these business owners are woke or not, that's irrelevant.
Right.
It's who's paying their bills that is allowing them to say whatever they say. I don't necessarily think it was that chick that said, oh, we're fratty and we have all these things. I don't think it was realistically her. I mean, did they single her out and fire her? Yeah, of course, because that's easy. And then everyone's like, oh, great, you got rid of the crazy person.
Right.
That's really not what it's about. It's always about the dollar. It's always about your bottom line. And I'm an extreme, like, I'm all for the free market. But when your dollar starts going for political agenda, then it's not the same dollar. I don't feel it's the same thing at all. When you become a free market company, and then you start saying you want X and Y in, ironically, X and Y chromosome, whatever. You want X and Y in the government, and you start paying for those particular lobbyists.
Right.
You then now infiltrate a whole different system that you shouldn't be in.
Right.
You know, capitalism at its finest is great when it's just the free market.
Right.
Not when it infiltrates what the government is doing, saying, or telling people to do.
Right.
That's where we get into this whole sticky situation of Twitter and, you know, FBI agents convincing people to do bad things or whatever. It just doesn't, I don't know, it's just not ideal.
So, do you remember a term that came around that either is dovetailing or was a segue or into what's going on now was this term of public-private partnerships.
Vaguely, but yeah.
For instance, these, if you look it up and you talk about, or you look up public-private partnerships where the government is in partner with private businesses and so forth,
Yeah.
this lends itself to the idea, and I think there's credence to it, about, again, here's the other end of public-private partnerships, and they shouldn't exist. They should be separate.
Yeah.
Completely separate. But you have, again, going back to Twitter, the influences that were found out to have had taken place from the government in regards to people's accounts. And that's just a small example of a private-public partnership, even though that one wasn't supposedly known. There's many that are known. But anytime I think you have this public-private partnership, you've begun to go down or are well down the trail of being part of this social credit score. I see all these things that have taken place. It's like to me, it's like a pyramid or the narrowing path. We keep getting closer and closer and closer to corporations and government and private citizens being funneled into this one thing, and where the government is going to be dictating in concert or partnership with companies, and we are the end users. We're the ones that are going to be making money on this or suffering from it.
Yeah.
And I think probably most of us are going to end up suffering from it because we're going to lose your rights.
Of course.
You're going to lose your privacy.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to lose your pursuit of happiness. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole point is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you don't have those three items, you don't have a leg to stand on.
And the pursuit of happiness would be making money,
Mm-hmm.
spending it as you wish, being able to travel freely.
Mm-hmm.
Those are elements, and that would all be affected by a social score, right? You wouldn't be able to travel if they said, well, you know what? You didn't do the right things here. We're going to limit your ability to travel.
Right. You get limited by your plane. You get limited by train.
Yeah.
And, I don't necessarily know. I mean, I read an article just recently out by China. It was out by the Institute of China or whatever. And they said that the social credit score isn't as bad as we think it is.
I'm sure.
But I'm assuming that you would not even be able to get amount of gas or what you need to be able to go to that. So say, for instance, you can't fly to, we'll say, Texas, right? But you can drive to it because you still have a car.
Right.
As long as you have a gas-powered car and not an electric car.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing. I mean, there's been article after article that I've read about Ford, particularly, shutting down cars because people weren't paying their bill. Not that I think you should not pay your bill, but there is a repo man. You now lost the repo man's job.
Right. Or what it does is it illustrates the control that somebody has over something that was purchased, and they're using maybe a potentially good thought, which is not a really good idea, to implement, because they could shut your car off because guess what? Your credit score is too low
to drive today.
Yeah,
so then how do you get a better one? If you can't make it to work, now you called in sick, so now your score is even lower.
Or the fact that maybe you have a good job, but other elements of your life dictate your interest rate for purchasing something. Would that be part of it?
Yep. So you have a great paying job. That's fine. Money coming in is totally okay. But you go out and drink excessively. So instead of having 2 beers, you have 3. And instead of having it on Friday, you have it on Wednesday. Which shows that you may not pick the best day to drink. Because apparently, Friday might be a better day
Right.
because it's the end of the week. You're not going into,
Right.
work groggy or whatever. Yeah, those all play a role. And I mean, I know it sounds a bit extreme and it sounds like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, how could this happen? This has been happening in China since 2014. Like, they have put in place and infiltrated this system since, in 2 years, by the time we elect a new president, it will be in place for China for 10 years. A decade now. So by the time we pick a new president or have the same rundown president, it will be in place for Chinese citizens, for 10 years. 10 whole years. Whole decade they've been doing this social credit score. And not even getting the right information. Like, some people are still locked up in buildings.
Do you also see things with a social credit score as far as, let's say, your health and your diet?
Okay, yes. So the UK actually doesn't have a social credit score. They have what is called a health credit score. So they don't necessarily. So in the UK, I think I said that they started in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is based on their health, not what they do per se for social activities, but what they do for health. So if they buy certain vitamins, and just so you know, in certain countries like Canada, you can't buy certain vitamins. They are illegal. So you can't buy. I think in Canada you can't buy potassium, vitamin C. Or there's something else. I forget the third one. There's another one.
Right.
Because they just don't think that you need it. So you can't. So UK has a health credit score,
Right.
and you can have a. You would have to eat correctly. You would have to.
Right.
Actively, exercise.
Right.
They would judge how much you walked.
Right.
As opposed to drive. If there was a Circle K down the street and you drove to it instead of walked to it, that would be regulated. Possibly. I don't have 100% certainty, but I would assume that if they saw on GPS that you drove to that 5-second Circle K instead of walked to it, that they would look at that as
now, how would they know where you went?
Well, again, that's because you have the cell phone.
And some people have wristwatches.
Yeah,
and
you have
it
the
tells
watch
them
that tells you, yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah.
So, I'm scared of this. I've heard of it. I didn't know what I knew that you educated me. So, it's scary. And if anybody doesn't think it's scary, and don't think that I don't think that any of these things are not still on the table and waiting to be implemented. I think that it's quietly being done right now. Do you think that a new administration would just be able to stop this or put it on hold? Or, would it be on hold until they were out of office?
So
Do you think this will go away?
Oh, I don't think it's going away. I don't think it's going away for the simple fact that, you've got this article that I just read about, it's on The Hill. It says credit score coming soon. It talks about PayPal working with Poverty Law Center, looking for white supremacists and extremists. PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what a lot of countries actually use. Like, if you pay South Africa or you pay UK. Oh, just so you know, also Alibaba, which I don't think you know what it is. Alibaba is basically...
you purchase things.
Right, but you can purchase them in bulk. They were one of the original starters of the social credit score, because depending on what you purchased from them,
Right.
they immediately told the government what you were purchasing and how much you
Right.
were purchasing of it. So they were huge proponents of it. Mind you, we can still order stuff from Alibaba. That's totally fine. Of course, we're looked at as, horrible citizens, but whatever. But I think, unfortunately, that we're so intertwined with technology that whatever administration comes in, so we'll say, let's just say the next administration is Republican.
Mhm.
I think we can push it back, but I'm not sure we can actually push it away.
I've always been, I've used this analogy. Everybody knows what a sine wave is. You know, it's, let's say up is good and down is bad. And then you have an ascending sine wave on a declining scale. So I think it goes, you know, in relation to what we're talking about, freedoms, liberty, and, you know, peace, prosperity, and so forth. I think it's not a ascending, but a descending sine wave. So the way I look at these things is it keeps getting worse, but the sine wave is descending. You know, yeah, there'll be moments, there'll be an administration, you'll see it improve, and then it's, but I see it overall just continually decreasing to the point of, well, I don't know what point it'll get at.
Well, that's the thing, is that we don't know. I mean, I guess if you're Alex Jones, it's the end, and there's a bit extreme.
Alex Jones. Well, however he does it.
I don't know how he does it. It's insane.
He's got a voice.
He definitely does. But I feel like mankind has a way of bouncing back. I don't know if technology has a way of bouncing back.
I think you're optimistic.
I am. I probably think that, you know, man is genuinely good, and I'm rooting for the mankind, but I feel that there's going to be a lot of disconnect. Like, we are going to have to disconnect from technology a lot more than we have, because I feel that we personally, not government, needs to regulate our technology use.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, I have a Fitbit, I have a smartphone, I have a smart TV, there's a lot, you know, but
I still have rabbit ears.
I would not be surprised.
I don't.
But I feel that we're going to have to regulate our technology usage to, I almost feel like we're going to be like steampunk and like go and live down and like there's definitely going to be a group that like does that. But anyways.
Well, I'm not against technology, but I've resisted things for various reasons, and there's much of it that's escaped me. I turned my CDs over to play the other side, but so I'm not in on it. So this was a good topic for this week, because this is looming in the background. It's a current event, but it's not current in everybody's mind. So I think it's a good topic for the viewers to think about.
Oh yeah, I agree. Do you have any quotes from the Founding Fathers?
Well, I don't have one from the Founding Fathers. However, I have one from a man by the name of John Stuart Mill, who is an English economist and philosopher, which is, I think, relative to this today. And this is what John Stuart Mill said. The only freedom which deserves the name freedom is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. And that's exactly what's going on with a social credit score.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Look this quote up if you're inclined, and I think it's relative to this right now. And it does encroach, I believe, on our privacy and the Constitution. And let me add one more thing in here from for people who don't read the Constitution. And you don't have to read it all, just digest it. And I'm not a scholar of it by any means. I read it. But let me give you a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And it says, "Study the Constitution. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislatures, and enforced in courts of justice." And that includes your Fourth Amendment rights to privacy. So I think those two dovetail rather well together in this topic this week. And these aren't happy things to talk about.
Not necessarily, no.
They're not.
That's why I still think man is good, and we have a chance of fighting back.
And what do I think?
You don't think that.
No, I think man is inherently evil and that power corrupts, and I think that's where we're at right now.
Yes, that would.
But there is good out there. Don't let me be too negative.
You're
So
nice.
I'm going to say what I've said last week. We're amateurs. We want your comments. We want you to put comments in the comment section when these are uploaded because it helps us and we want to deliver good content to you. So it helps us. So please give us your comments and be polite. But we want to know negative and positive, and we want to know things that maybe you want to hear about, and we'll present them to you. And this is the thing. We believe in the Constitution. Yeah, people would label us as this or that, but in the end, if you want to say we're one or the other, it's not true. We believe in the Constitution that we live under. So we want to hear from you anyway, and that's our belief system, and that's what we're trying to bring to you. Public matters, and these are matters for everybody, and we believe in your rights.